Hi, my name is JRYussuf, and I am the host of Just JR, which is a YouTube channel where I focus on mental wellness and bisexuality. Today, I am joined by a very special guest. Rachel Siden is here with me. Their pronouns are she and her. Rachel Siden is a health researcher and a volunteer for the Bisexual Resource Center out in Boston. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here today.
Cool. And so the reason why I have Rachel on this platform today is because we have been doing work on a pamphlet for the Bisexual Resource Center for a little over a year now, and it is finally ready, and I'm really excited. So the pamphlet is titled Bisexuality Plus and Christianity. And so today we are going to be talking about our work surrounding it and our feelings about it, both being co-authors of it. And so I kind of also want to give like a little PSA that this video actually might not be super, how can I say this? If you are a Christian, this video might actually offend you. And so it might not be something that you might want to watch, especially if you're not in the right headspace right now. So I just kind of want to give that warning. And I also want to take responsibility of my own words, and that I want to say that they are not a reflection of the Bi Resource Center. They are not a reflection of Rachel's views. They are solely my views. So I kind of wanted to get that out of the way before we get started. Okay.
My views are also my own.
Cool, yeah. So the first question that I have for you is, how did this pamphlet and the idea of it come to be?
Yeah, so it all kind of started a couple years ago. I wrote a coming out letter that was kind of addressed to my Christian family and friends. And I had sent it to the Bisexual Resource Center, and they were interested in publishing it on their blog. And my motive for doing that was I just wanted a link to share on my Facebook page so that I could just come out, and if anyone did not understand what was going on, they could just click to that link and read the letter. And so I did it mostly for me at the time, but then what started happening was that I was getting some complete strangers reaching out to me, finding me on social media saying, I'm bisexual or pansexual, and I'm Christian and I don't know what to do. Can you talk to me about your story, or send me resources? And they found me because they Googled bisexuality and Christianity, and my little coming out letter came up in whatever results they were getting. So I learned pretty quickly that, like, one, if my random little coming out letter was coming up in their searches, then there's really no resources out there for bisexual plus people. And then when they were asking me, like, do you have other resources, it made me more aware of how in my journey, it was kind of scant, and I had to really like pick from random places, and to try and like assemble all of that to give to someone else was like, I wish that there was some sort of resource that I could send people. So then when COVID hit and kind of upended a lot of things for me, and I was looking for something meaningful to work on, I think around that time, someone else had reached out to me, and I had that idea. It's like, I think it's time to put together a resource. Maybe this is something that can be done. And I went to the Bisexual Resource Center in Boston and presented the idea to them, and they were all about it. It's like, all right, go find some co-authors and let's do this.
Wow. Wow. And like, I relate so much to like so much of what you said, because personally, that journey for me started back in like late 2011, early 2012, of like realizing that like this context, like a Christian context, is really not something that I'm interested in being a part of anymore. And when I tell you the guilt that I felt, first of all, and also just the lack of support, there was nothing. I couldn't find anything back in 2012. I couldn't find anything, you know? So like that definitely resonated with me.
Yeah.
And my next question is going to be, how did you come to selecting me as a co-author, and how did you select the contributors and proofreaders?
Yeah, so when the project first started getting rolling, the Bisexual Resource Center said to start looking for co-authors. And so, my first thought whenever I have to do anything is like, all right, who do I know in my like inner circle that, is easily approachable, who knows me well, that I can reach out to help with this? And when I really looked at my network of like bisexual plus people, ones with like more or less a Christian background, they are majority like cis white women, cis white bisexual women. And so when I thought about like creating this, is like, I don't want there to be a team of white bisexual, cisgender bisexual women putting this together, because it's going to be important to capture the uniqueness of different people's experiences and to get different perspectives. So my goal, and when I started thinking about other people to contact, was, and then also resources that I was finding online tended to be written by white cisgender evangelical men. Like they seem to have, for whatever reason, like be the ones putting out most of this stuff for like LGBTQ plus resources with Christianity. So I was like, all right, I just want to start finding people that, beyond just this cisgender white evangelical experience. And how I came to you specifically was, I think that I was already following you on Twitter at the time, because you shared, it may have been over Bisexual Men Speak, your hashtag, or something else. But I remember the YouTube video that you made about your experience being bisexual and Christian. And it was just such a, like, at the time when I found it, it was meaningful to me, because it was like, you were describing so many things that I related to, and then things that I didn't even know that I would have related to until you said it. Like, it was just like, I've discovered other ways that I've been impacted by my relationship.
Yeah.
And so it was something that was impactful to me. And so when I started thinking about this project, it was like, you had also talked in your video about certain experiences that were totally not relatable to me, that were totally unique to you. And you were already, so you created this YouTube video. So you have been talking about Christianity. You do talk about bisexuality. You're also an author, and you just seemed like the first person to reach out to. And I'm also so glad that you stayed on this project till the end.
Thank you.
And contributed all that you have.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. And what about the contributors and the proofreaders?
Yeah, so it was it was kind of challenging to just look for more people. And I ended up, I think it was through Twitter actually, ended up being a major resource to just kind of like look at who was out there and doing this kind of stuff. And Alicia, the other contributor on this project, I found, and oh no, you know what, actually I found them through they had separately contacted the Bisexual Resource Center because they were trying to do similar work, and that was how we got connected. And that's
cool. Wow.
Yeah. And then in the process, there have been a lot more attempts to find other co-authors and contributors, and not all of them stayed on the project, but a lot of that was done through Twitter, like people that were putting their stuff out there.
Right. And I remember also, like, you were really, really interested in trying to find trans masculine voices and trans women and people who don't even live in the United States too. At one point, you really tried to like reach out to many different kinds of people. But like you just said, it was challenging. I mean, we were in the middle of a global pandemic, and last year was just so incredibly traumatic. So a lot of people that you reached out to weren't able to actually like work on this and see it all the way through, though you did reach out to many different kinds of people.
Yeah. And they were all very interested in being part, like theoretically, it was kind of, again, these are very different circumstances where it couldn't be prioritized for a lot of people. So yeah, for sure. All right. So now I would like to ask you, JR, why was this important for you to be a part of?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at earlier, 2012 was such a transformational year for me, leaving Christianity specifically, and outside of having a therapist, there was literally nobody else in my life who could even support me as I was leaving Christianity. You know, I had grown up as a devout Christian, and also, I had grown up with having parents who were Christians, and then eventually I became devout. So everybody that I had known up until that point in my early 20s was Christian. And like devout Christians, my entire circles, my networks of friends, like the way I had even met people from 5 years prior, 10 years prior, was either through church or like a Christian context. So I literally had no support as I was transitioning out, leaving. And I remember how dark of a time that was, and how vulnerable I was during that time. And literally, if I didn't have a therapist at that time, I don't know what would have happened. And I wanted to be a part of this because I wanted to sort of make use of that time in my life and those experiences, and hopefully fill in a little bit of the gap, hopefully maybe a little bit for someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I think about my own journey and how it was really just these little bits here and there that are really hard when someone's asking you, can you tell me like what you used on your journey? It's like, well, it's like, you know, a little piece from this podcast here and like this article here and like, and I kind of strung them together over many years, sort of. So it was, yeah, the thought of being able to like compile all of these things into one place was definitely a big part of it. And also something that was specific to the bisexual plus experience, because I didn't even think about how like those things that I was picking up on over the years were very much geared towards kind of the gay and lesbian experience.
Yep.
And yeah, where like my own coming out wasn't what I thought it was going to be, because like I had been hearing those stories from a different perspective than mine, and that bisexuality was such a different thing, where like, you know, I thought it was going to be either my family accepted or rejected me, but no, I'm in this weird middle space where they're like, just don't understand it or think that I can choose, like, and I wasn't prepared for that. It's been fine to navigate, but yeah, it's like when you're only getting these this advice from this experience that's not fully matching yours, it doesn't prepare you the same. So.
And also, yeah, that's such a good point. And like when I've told people about this, about my work on this, I've gotten a question about like, oh, why not more generally like the LGBT community? And kind of what they were asking really was, why not for gay people? Literally, like they weren't asking about trans people or gender expansive people. They weren't asking about that. Literally, I like they were not. They were asking about like, oh, like why not make it more general for like gay people too? And I'm like, I was like, so like bisexuals and pansexuals and fluid people under the bisexual umbrella are an underserved community in the LGBT community. And when you look at the breakdown and funding from like major organizations that are major LGBT organizations, when you look at where the funding goes, it does not go to bisexual funded programs and events or mental wellness things. It does not really go to transgender people and their needs and things like that. It largely goes to gay men, and it also goes to lesbian women, but a lot more to gay men. So that's really the breakdown. This is an underserved, under-resourced community under the LGBT umbrella. So that is the answer that I'm going to give.
Yeah. What was something particularly challenging for you about working on this?
Okay, so I wrote a little something. So I would say something that was particularly challenging about working on this was holding multiple truths at once. Doing this work felt really, really sticky, to be honest. I believe in agency and supporting people's right to choose and believe what they will, but that sounds very admirable and very rosy. But at the same time, each belief system has not had the same expansion and PR that Christianity has had. Some belief systems have been eradicated because of Christianity in tandem with white supremacy. Some belief systems have been demonized because of Christianity. The absence of belief has also been painted in a very particular light by the presiding religious or moral compass, which has been Christianity and Catholicism for a very long time. So like supporting people's right to believe what they want will always be used to defend the presiding religion, which is Christianity. And it feels like a losing game when you take Christianity's history and present into account. So that has been very challenging to understand while believing in agency.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. I think for me, I'll get into my philosophical, like my some of the things when I think of just like, this project and what was challenging. This was like the first project that I was kind of like having to manage really that involved other people. And that was something that was totally new and and you're wanting to produce good work and you want it to be good and you want to make sure that everyone is, contributing and that they're also putting in what they want to be putting into it, and that so that everyone's happy with the final product. And it was just like a totally new experience to try and like figure all of that out. And we already talked about finding contributors during COVID was also challenging, and even just the process of editing. This was like the first time where I've really because I've written some things before, but I wasn't as like personally invested in the outcome to where that whole process of like, oh, I really want this to be in there, but there's not enough room. How are we gonna adapt this? And I am really glad that I think it's like kind of as perfect as it can be for what we were working with and how short it had to be. But at the same time, there's so much that I want to put in it that's, it would take a book, but you don't have.
Literally.
Yeah, for sure.
I hear you. Okay, so the next question that I have is, what are some of your hopes for the pamphlet?
Yeah, my hopes are definitely that, someone out there, that it helps them on their journey and makes things smoother. Because for some people, navigating faith and sexuality isn't a big deal. For some people, it can be traumatic. And just for anyone who's doing any kind of that processing, that this can be something as a starting point at the very least to, encourage somebody or support somebody somewhere. So
Yeah,
that's the biggest hope.
yeah. I think I have the same exact hope. Honestly, I feel like you said that perfectly. So,
Yeah.
And what are some of your fears or uncertainty surrounding the pamphlet?
Yeah. So yeah, this is my philosophical topic. So
Okay.
it's like with the audience, like I really wanted it to be for anyone at different stages of their faith journey, I suppose, where because I've been in so many different stages myself and could have benefited from a resource at any stage. So I wanted to have it accessible, or for people who are very devout still and want to stay in that they can figure out a way to integrate their sexuality with a devout Christian faith. But I also wanted people who are Christianity or a devout religious practice is not authentic to them, and they are leaving and want to leave. And that they also feel something they're being supported in deconstructing or leaving their faith. And I guess my biggest fear is that, because I wanted so much to have it be available to all of these different stages of being religious, I suppose, that maybe it will not work for some people at the same time, because I can imagine some, I'm thinking my past self on this, that when I was at my highest, most devout, that if I saw a resource like this and there was a section about saying it's okay to leave your faith, that I would have thrown the whole thing in the trash. And then on the flip side, I also don't want people who, were damaged by Christianity or leaving to feel like they need to stay, you know what I mean? It's those kinds of things where I'm really hoping that helps people find authenticity and not, make things harder for them, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's how about you, JR?
That's really tough. Yeah, it's really tough because like you just said, we're trying to serve a spectrum of people. like with their religious journey or spiritual journey or whatever, like trying to support an entire spectrum of people. Yeah. So I wrote something here because I didn't want to flub.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so one of my biggest fears surrounding my participation is the potential for this pamphlet to help reshape Christianity's image to make it more palatable in 2021 and beyond. My worst case scenario is in years to come, Christianity at large will use this pamphlet as a way to rebrand and position itself as though it is not harmful, especially towards LGBT people. And the only issue was imperfect human practitioners who caused harm due to incorrect interpretations. I recognize this attitude and my own imagined worst case scenario as manipulation, gaslighting, and an unwillingness to take responsibility. I recognize the significant contributions that select LGBTQ Christian leaders and select cisgender heterosexual Christian leaders have made toward LGBTQ advocacy and the fight toward equality in the areas of organizing after Stonewall, taking action during the HIV/AIDS crisis while the United States government did not, demonstrating solidarity immediately after the Pulse nightclub tragedy and other LGBTQ hate crimes, vocal support of same gender marriage as of 2015 and increasingly since, and voicing support for the Equality Act, a groundbreaking bill that would provide LGBTQ Americans consistent and explicit protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity in key areas of public life. I maintain that Christians should not have had the power to assert their will, beliefs, and bias onto the masses, dating back to people indigenous to this land being characterized as subhuman because of their varied spiritual practices and beliefs, which was an integral part of indigenous genocide and boarding schools established to civilize Native Americans, to chattel slavery and Black American genocide, global colonization, all the way up to the Marriage Equality Act in 2015. I see attempts to occlude this history or to clean up modern day Christianity's image without acknowledging and actively attempting to rectify this harmful past and present as the violence that it is. This would be counterproductive to truthful dealings because it operates in appearances rather than the truth laying in its underbelly. I worry that this pamphlet supports Christianity's many denominations more than it does a bisexual plus Christian person's self-esteem and healing. I believe the pamphlet may support their self-esteem, but only secondarily. And at the time of working on this, it seemed as though it had to be written this way. I worry this will not positively affect their feelings about their sexuality, but those are some of my own anxieties. I wonder if I will eventually regret participating, and I'm really not sure if I will regret it someday.
Yeah, that's such an important thing too, because like, just when I think of my relationship to Christianity, it's like there's so many things that like, harms that can kind of be perpetuated. And, if this pamphlet is just used to make the church queerer, that's not not going to be, that doesn't make the world like, I don't know. Because I can think of some people that think that's all that needs to happen. And like, once the church is accepting queer people, we're done here.
Yeah.
Which is not the case.
Well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Gerald, can I ask you, what are some of the residual effects of being religious?
Yeah. Ooh. Well,
I'm ready.
So thankfully, it has been such a long journey. And like I said, it started kind of in like 2011, 2012. And so I've come such a long way in this last like 10 years, thankfully. And I have like purged a lot of those residual effects. However, I did notice, like I recognized this only a couple of months ago, that I was like deeply afraid of having made the wrong decision, and that me having made the wrong decision of leaving Christianity means that there is a hell and that I will be in hell and I will burn for forever. And so that links back to religious trauma syndrome, which is a form of PTSD. And I will link a website down below where you can learn way more about religious trauma syndrome. But it is actually something that you can see. What am I trying to say? Lil Nas X's video.
Oh, yes.
The internet. So part of the explosiveness of people's reaction to it is the fear of going to hell. People are terrified of going to hell. And that is a huge force that's keeping people in Christianity. Fear, and the fear of being damned for all of eternity. And so I didn't even realize like that I was still afraid of that. But literally just a few short months ago, I was smoking, and, and it was a bad high. Mm-hmm. And I realized like, oh, like I am terrified still, like deep down, like my subconscious, I am really scared. And like, thankfully I have the resources to like do the work on some of that. But yeah, I would say that's probably like one of the last things that I'm aware of that is still here. But it has been a long journey. This last 10 years of like getting rid of the residual stuff has been a very
yeah. Have you find that there's always new things like, or feeling like, in the years to come, that there's got to be a couple more things at least you're going to remember, like,
maybe yeah, maybe yeah. Yeah. How about you? Yeah, like how
Yeah, well, yeah, same, so many things, because kind of on that note, I am always uncovering new stuff that like, different psychological impacts that my, religious upbringing has had on me. And there's just always new stuff that I'm finding. And I just believe that I'm always probably going to, over the years, it'll probably get less like as time goes on, but I think it'll still be there. And things like even this morning, I was just like, oh, I always think that I'm being watched still. Like, I always feel like if I'm going to make certain decisions that like God and Satan are right behind me, like seeing what I'm going to do. Most recently too, like kind of talking about, because it's relevant to sexuality and the bisexual experience, I suppose, like when people think of, Christianity and sexuality and queerness, that like, that the queer part of you is what's been like the most damaged and suppressed and whatnot. And to an extent that's true, but man, this last year, the work I've been doing with my therapist, I've been realizing that, maybe in the future I'll start uncovering things, but I've dated across the gender spectrum, and I have had a lot of, like, when I started dating women for the first time, I was able to kind of do whatever I wanted, guilt-free, and just go on single dates or have a relationship or one night stands pretty simply. And then when it came to men, I realized, like, if there was some guy that I wanted to go on a date with or hook up with, that like there was an immediate aversion, and it's like, you can't do that. And I was like, why? Like, or I could override it, but then I would feel like there's a high probability that I would be not okay if I did that. And I guess my theory, what I've been working with, because the moment that it kind of started coming to light for me was purity culture, and being really internalizing the, not let a man have this. And some noise outside, sorry.
I have noise in my background too.
Okay. Yeah, that like, you have to stay a virgin. You cannot let, just any man have it. You have to wait for the special man. So I think that there's this part of me that's like, I feel the need to, like, if I was going to do anything with a guy, he would have to like have a job interview first and prove himself to me, which is weird. And so yeah, there is a lot of, and this is just, I'm 20 years old, and this is this last year that that has been coming to light, and something I'm processing, because so there's always something.
Wait, you're 20?
What's that?
How old are you?
28, turning 20.
Oh, 28. I thought you said 20. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, I'm 32. I'm 32.
Yeah, I thought we were close-ish. So
Yeah.
28, turning 29, and I feel like I'm a woman now, and I'm still like, oh, there's still some stuff here that I got to work on.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Uh, what's something that, let's see. How do you feel about your spirituality today?
Yeah, so I am so grateful for my journey, and I'm so grateful, like I love myself so much. And that is not something that I could say 10 years ago and really deeply believe.
Mm,
Um, so I love myself so much. Let's start there.
yay.
Right. So I have this experience of growing up in a Christian home and then eventually becoming very, very, very devout. Didn't curse, didn't drink, didn't listen to secular music, didn't, the list goes on, didn't have sex, blah, 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 right. And then I decide that that was not working for me and I leave. And after I left, I was just kind of like in this space of like, oh, like, I don't know. Like, I know that wasn't working for me, but I don't know. Let me kind of be open. Eventually I got to that place of like openness after I had done like a lot of healing, of being open, like, okay, well, I never gave any other religion or spiritual practices a fair chance, right? Let me see. Like, I don't know. So I feel like from like about 2012, 2013 until about 2000, maybe like 17, 2018, I was definitely engaging with a wide variety of practices. I finally, like, I did a lot of reading on things like Wicca and like the idea of allowing people to tell you who they are versus like allow like a religion to tell you like, oh, this religion is demonic or evil or bad. So like literally just like educating myself on various religions and trying to see which one could possibly resonate. Um, and like I had a yoga practice, and a lot of my friends are into horoscope and the stars and the universe and all of that stuff. And so for those years, I was in those spaces, and I was like using like some of the language and some of the belief systems, and like for a while, it was kind of like, oh, this is like cool. This is okay. This is cool. You know what I mean? But then I think like in like 2018, 2019, I started to just really reflect, and I was like, yeah, I don't think that this resonates. And I don't really have a desire to be spiritual in a lot of these ways. And like, I don't know, like my yoga practice was definitely something that helped me throughout the pandemic. Um, and doing a lot of healing work has really helped me, and generational trauma and all of that stuff, healing that stuff has been like spiritual, but I do not identify as a spiritual person. I do not identify with any religion. I do not have a desire to connect with a higher being or to believe in one or to practice like a spirituality thing in like a formalized way or whatever. Like, if something traumatic happens to me, I'm going to try and heal from it. And some people will call that like spiritual. That's not how I would define it, but I can understand how people can see like that's like spiritual work. I can get that, but I'm not interested. And that's something I've really realized. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting because like, yeah, while you're talking, again, there's like moments where it's like, oh, I relate to that. And it's like, oh, but it's a little bit different actually. Maybe I don't. And
Yeah. How about you? Like, how would you define like your spirituality, or how do you feel about spirituality today?
yeah. I am not Christian anymore. I like for a while I was very like, even though I wasn't going to church and didn't like see myself as fitting into like the traditional Christian religion, I didn't use that word because it was still such a big part of my spirituality. And then I don't know what happened, but at some point it was like, actually, this does not fit anymore. Like, I just don't like, there's no connection with that word. Um, and I have just over the years, like, I mean, even when I was Christian, I was really interested in other religions, and like I majored in philosophy and religious studies. So I loved collecting these little bits of things from other places that had meaning to me. And so I had that as I was starting to, like, I use the word deconstruct my Christianity, like, I went back to exploring other things. And yeah, and it's just interesting how, and I remember like hitting a moment where I really was like, kind of lost my faith and being like, all right, well, where are we at? Like, what does that mean? And it's like, am I an atheist now? And kind of thinking about it and like, no, I'm not. Like, that doesn't fit either. I'm still something. So I like went right to the line, was like, that's not me. Like, so now we're going to go back the other direction and figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess where I'm at now, like it's just kind of, I guess as a rule, it's like, I love to learn, and especially as it relates to like personal growth and, you know, and anything too, like finding higher purpose and connecting with others, like, and so I've looked into a lot of different like religions and spiritualities, and it's kind of like the rule of thumb I use is just I keep what works and I just get rid of what doesn't.
Yeah.
And gosh, when I think about spirituality, it's like I do, yeah, when I first thought, I was like, yeah, spiritual, of course I'm spiritual. I definitely am. I'm not like, I definitely think of something, but I was really relating to what you were saying about how like, I don't have a regular practice. I don't feel connected to anyone's spirituality or like have anything like that. It's really an as needed thing. Like, I don't know, like, so that it's almost like you're kind of in the moment making me question what that even means to be spiritual.
I don't mean to do that.
No, in a good way. I love it. But yeah, fundamentally, just what I've got going on works really well. And like, I can hear people that might be like, well, you can't cherry pick from different spiritualities. That's so self-centered and serving. And it's like, all I can think of is how, like, I think the first year or two where I started really doing that, I grew so much more as a person, healed so much more of a person than my entire life in Christianity.
Yeah.
You're told it's like, you got to do this and only this. And when it's not working for you, you don't have any other options. You have to just keep buckling down and doing this. And then having the freedom to be like, actually, this isn't working. I'm going to try something else. That growth happens. Like,
yeah.
Oh
my
sure.
God. And like what you just said, that was so good. But it also brought something up for me. So I think what it was really over this last year of being in quarantine and joining like this school, this online school for like healing and stuff like that, and working on like your subconscious mind. I started to think about things that I prefer in my life. And so kind of since 2012, I've been like dating people who were like spiritual. And, you know, that's been like ups and downs. Like some people are great, some people are not great, some people are in between. But like as a Black bisexual man, like I can go into atheist and agnostic communities and know that that's not even like an issue. Because a lot of them read. A lot of them are invested in like checking their bias and like doing the work, versus in spiritual communities, it might, like as a Black bisexual man, and I'm specifically kind of talking about women, I guess, like that's kind of what I'm talking about. As a Black bisexual man in spiritual communities, who knows what I'm gonna get, you know what I mean? And then even with like gay men in spiritual communities, the biphobia is there too, or it's who knows what I'm gonna get. But like going into like atheist communities, agnostic communities that are first of all so small, but like I know that that's not even going to be an issue. Like that's not even like, it's like, what, like I need more information about you. Like this is completely like not irrelevant, but like, yeah, like what, like whatever, like okay, like tell me about you. That's not even a thing. versus in spiritual communities and definitely in Christian communities, that is a big deal. That is a huge thing. And so that is like certainly an aspect of it too, of like, where do I go where I feel like, oh, at home? Or maybe not even at home, but like it's not such a fight to kind of be on the same page or similar pages. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the deciding, or one of the deciding things of like, oh, I feel like better over here. I don't have to explain myself as much over here.
Right. Yeah, that's something really important. And it's kind of, I'm both like finding this really interesting, but then there's also this part of me that's like really not surprised, because especially like spiritual people, like their spirituality can sometimes be like, actually be oftentimes just such a source of unawareness, like where it's like, yeah.
That's cool. Like there's this term that I recently learned about, which is like spiritual bypass, which is like yeah, which is where like it happens in a lot of like spiritual communities, and I hope like I'm not going to butcher the definition, but it's something that happens in a lot of like very spiritual communities of like, okay, we do yoga and then right after we meditate for 2 hours and like we get to be like carefree or zen or whatever, but we're doing that as a way of avoiding the work and like the hard parts of healing and like communicating better, and not just with a soft tone. Oh, like everything's great. No, not just with a soft tone. Where's that coming from? And like, have you healed that part? And like, why do you think it's appropriate to like talk to other human beings this way or treat or manipulate or like, you know what I mean? And so like, that is something that I was recently made aware of, like spiritual bypass. Like you're not doing the work, the muddy, tough work of like really understanding and working through a lot of that stuff. You're just going for like the Zen feeling. Yeah.
I'm excited to look this up later because I think I have a word for something.
And I hope I did it justice. I don't know, like anyway.
I'll be sure to
okay. Yeah, and everybody watching this, please don't take my word for it. Please look it up because I hope I didn't mess it up. Anyway, so we're at our last question. And so our last question is, what's something you wish you could have said to your younger Christian self?
Man, I think fundamentally, like the thing that comes to mind, and this is just for me, like I wouldn't necessarily have told this to myself at a later stage in my journey or to other people, but at the start of all this for me, what I really needed was just the space to ask questions. And I didn't have that space because I was so obsessed with feeling impure or a sinner or that God didn't love me, and like just kind of caught up in that mess. And the message I would have for my younger self when I was at that time is, this is not a big deal. Like, and I would remind myself of, don't you believe that God's love covers everything and that Jesus hung out with the disreputable people in town and that the thief was going to paradise? It's like, you believe so much that God cares more about like being close to you than, you know, sin. Why do you think this is different? Like you've got like, you know, if you're just sitting alone trying to work through your same gender attraction, you've got plenty of space and God's there with you. And then also like, I think it was you, JR, who used this term, but like the moral hierarchy, where like, I find it so odd that like, you know, I was doing selfish things on a daily basis. And, you know, like if I chose not to do the dishes when it was my turn and my roommate was forced to do them, it's like, that's not like, how is that ranking with you know, my same gender attraction? Like I really put this one above the other when I'm actually impacting somebody else. Like, and so fundamentally just like those little reframing moments just to remind myself, this is not a big deal and you have the space to work through this, and don't worry about all of these negative things that are coming up. It'll be okay. Like, and you'll navigate through this.
That's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Your lighting kind of changed, but I think it changed back. It's better now. Okay.
Yeah, I have. There's a thunderstorm rolling through, so like dark, and hopefully I don't lose internet.
Oh wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So we should wrap this up. I should answer. Okay, I'm gonna answer.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, so yeah, I would say, what's something you wish you could have said to your younger self? I would have said to my younger self, not to anybody else, literally just to younger JR, who was a Christian. Um, I was so used to being discarded and used to being pitied and looked down upon at best. I was used to having aggression, accusations, and violence enacted upon me at worst. I remember always thinking to myself, I am tough. I can take this. And I'd like to counter that by saying, but should the it that you can take be happening at all? I'd say to my younger Christian self, question where that paternalism, condescension, and harm, dressed as love, is coming from and what it's doing to your self esteem. Who and what is responsible for the nonstop shame, guilt, disgust, and inner turmoil? The vicious cycle is not worth it. So yeah, and on that note, I think that is a great place to end. I implore all of you to please take a look at the pamphlet that both Rachel Siden and I co-authored, which is called Bisexuality Plus and Christianity. It is available on the Bi Resource Center website. And yeah, we did a really great job, Rachel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for organizing this and having me on, JR.
No problem.
All right.
All right. Bye.